everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is the Solidarity Friday edition. This one's a little different. Thankfully, I'm back home from all of these conferences and weird travels. Yeah. And today we have two recordings done in Miami to share with you. So we have Ahmad Doroudian from BetterLife, a very interesting company showing not all psychedelic medicine, I guess, needs to be psychedelic. It's really interesting, and we'll get into it once the show rolls. And also Abid Nazeer from the Wesana group, a lot of really interesting insight there around ketamine. So yeah, we had this kind of backstage room for recording podcasts, and we were able to block off 30 to 60 minutes at a time to crank out interviews with these folks. And it's really nice to be with them in person and get a sense of who they are, what they're up to, why they're up to it, things like that. What we can't always do on the internet. So just another reminder of why we need to be going to in-person events. It's really nice that it's back. Yeah. So I hope you enjoy those two interviews. I think David Drapkin on our team ran the Abid Nazeer Wesana interview, and I did the Ahmad Doroudian BetterLife interview with David. So it was really fun. I'm just, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to meet all these folks in person and check in on what they're up to. And, like I said, the why, that's a big deal. Yeah. So I think that's it for talking about those two. And, I'll kind of run on for a little bit here in place of a normal PTSF, but reminder, January 6th, we kick off Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists again. Now a 9-week program, 49 hours maybe it's up to. And there's CEs available. You can learn more at psychedelicstoday.com. Yeah, great foundation course. You don't need to be a therapist. You don't need to be a clinician, but we speak at that level. So just be ready to think really critically, understand that we're speaking at a pretty high level, but everyone's welcome. Okay, so Horizons is a new thing coming up as well. Horizons NYC, kind of a really long-standing conference. I think it was my first conference. I went maybe, oh, God knows, it must have been 2009, 2010 maybe, shortly after I was out of my undergrad. And it was extraordinary. I got to see Sasha Shulgin there. They were actually filming scenes for the film about Sasha Shulgin, Dirty Pictures, which was nice. Yeah, it's just an extraordinary conference. I'm personally not going. I just need time to relax after all this travel I just did. And I believe Kyle and David from our team will be there. A lot of our friends will be there. So if you want to come, horizons.nyc. Check out our socials if you want a discount coupon. You can save some money there on Horizons. So check that out. Again, not a paid thing with Horizons. We're just a Friends and Allies program member there. So you'll hear about this a little bit more. What else? Commentary on Wonderland. So we did promise a little bit more commentary on Wonderland because we were brief last time. I think most of my commentary stands. This is a really new development in our space. The pandemic made it stranger, right? Because all this was happening and we couldn't meet each other. So this was the first time a lot of these folks had ever been to a psychedelic event, never mind a conference, right? So, it's great to have all these new folks come. And we lost both Media Company of the Year and Podcast of the Year in the psychedelic space. I'm okay with that at the conference. But what was really interesting is how few people heard about us or knew what we were up to. I'm okay with that too, because there's so many newcomers. We're not going to hit everybody, and we're certainly not designing our content for mass appeal. So it makes sense. But what is cool is that energy's coming in and people are, throwing a lot of money behind these companies to get these various treatments for various indications approved. And, not only approved, but we have had, many decades of lack of research here, and we need to really backfill our understanding of these drugs through really well-funded clinical research. So these groups can help do that, both on the kind of private data side and also help fund university studies that will get published and the data will be open. So There's hope. There's also hope that federal research funds will open up. We all saw the Matt Johnson thing where I believe NIDA or some group gave Matt Johnson's team at Hopkins funding to execute a smoking cessation trial with psilocybin. Forget what company is behind that. It might be Midocin, but I'm not 100%. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, there's really cool kind of private-public partnerships developing. And, this, because the feds haven't stepped up yet, it's up to private business to do that. Private individuals, nonprofits, and, groups to really, rattle the feds, make them do something about this. The suicide stats and, just health in general in the country is not satisfactory. We need to do something. Psychedelics could make a dent, in my opinion. And that's why it's good that all these folks are here. It's good that the VCs are in. Yes, there's going to be a land grab. Yes, people are going to lose. But, what are we losing compared to how much suffering is getting alleviated? We don't know how much will be alleviated yet, but in my estimation, a lot. A lot. And, a lot of people get nervous about private industry impacting, I guess, legacy use cases. And do we really need to be concerned about that? Can psilocybin or LSD become more illegal? Kind of, I don't think so. Can we, get new data, new ways of applying things like ibogaine? There's a lot there. Double Blind did a great article recently about reciprocity, and it discussed actually some international treaties signed to help give back to tribes who stewarded these plants and animals for centuries, if not millennia. And I think that's important for us in this scene to really understand, like, what is biopiracy? How do we want to relate to it? How do we want our businesses to relate to it? And what can we do so how we're operating is not biopiracy? I always have a little bit of a personal struggle with it because my tradition comes from LSD and MDMA. But, I understand that others see it differently. When my tradition comes from Soviet Prague in an occupied country by the Soviets, like, it's a weird frame and it's hard to relate to. So it's a lot easier to relate to colonists eradicating people and stealing their stuff. It's a much easier to understand story. So I get it. I get why it's confusing, but the story is never simple. And how can we do more 360 analysis and not just, pigeonhole on one particular pothole in a story and say, hey, like, we have the opportunity to help millions and millions and millions of underserved people here, get them well and resilient before all of these crises, converging crises, really, really, really hit the fan, which feels like it's happening already. But I think we've got a few more years of good mobility left before stuff really goes down. So, we're in this weird crisis point, right? Environment, politics, and more. And not to mention religion is in the mix here too. That was something that came up, I think, yesterday. You want to have a really good time at a dinner party, you bring up politics and religion. And what is a lot of this psychedelic conversation other than discussing politics and religion at the same time? Probably why it's so heated right now in the space. How do we take a more measured approach? Go slower, go easier on yourself and others. Investigate whether what you're doing is making a difference or is it just more virtue signaling. I'm guilty of plenty of virtue signaling, but on occasion, I think what I do is really, really important. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's an end enough of a rant here. But again, Wonderland was lovely. I really will go back. I love Miami. I wish I didn't like Miami. And again, this feeds back into the environment thing. How long does Miami have before it has very regular floods? I went years ago to the Boston Underwater Festival, which was Climate Fest. I think I've talked about it on the show a bunch, but Climate Festival talking about how deep underwater Boston's going to be in, 30 years based on all the projections. And yeah, long road. Technology can help. Science helps. So, as I've said many times in the show, psychedelics fueling creativity and problem solving on things like solar, wind, nuclear, recycling, high-tech composting, vertical integrated farming. I really like this concept of an arcology. Check it out at some point. Arcology, it's a type of building that's totally self-contained. So you could have like a lush indoor Miami type climate in a standalone huge building with the right technology and design. So, no leaking of water out. So very minimal required inputs. I think it's a really cool idea. And these kinds of things could get fleshed out through psychedelics for creative problem solving. Best I can tell, no one's on that yet from a business point of view. So if you're not, check it out. All right, I think that's it for now, everybody. Enjoy. Ahmad Doroudian from BetterLife and Abid Nazeer from SciTech Wesana. Yeah, we'll see you on the other side. Thanks for listening. Due to our relationship with BetterLife, we want to disclose that there is a paid business relationship here with BetterLife. So just wanted to make that explicit and make sure there are no questions on that. I do really appreciate what they're up to and like how they're coming into the space. So just wanted to throw it out there so that there's no strange conflicts of interest downstream.
Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is David Drapkin, Joe Moore, and Ahmad Doroudian at the Wonderland Conference in Miami. We are having a wonderful time here, meeting amazing people. We've been to the beach. We were on a yacht last night, and Joe's been to a mansion today. So just fantastic times here, meeting some incredible scientists and personalities in this space. So welcome, Ahmad. It's a real pleasure to meet you. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Good conference.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you because, as I walked in, it sounded like you were up to some really interesting things around. Was it Twobromo, Wonderland LSD?
Twobromo LSD.
Twobromo LSD, and related to cluster headaches, which massively underserved population. Yeah, somewhat orphaned, maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't quite get the orphan designation.
It's just above it.
It's just above it, but there are subtypes of that could fall into.
So how did you as an individual find your way into this space?
Well, about a year ago, I've been in the pharmaceutical space for about 30 years in various parts of it. And was working on an antiviral drug with my team. A year ago around this time, we came across this opportunity to acquire assets of a company called Transcend Biodynamics. And unlike us, they had a lot of experience with psychedelics, the whole space, and its various benefits to treat addiction and other things. Total believers in this, but they did lack the science and the clinical wherewithal to take this to the next step. So we got together, looked at this, and from the pharma perspective, it checked a few boxes. One was they're talking about a completely non-scheduled, non-controlled pathway on the synthesis.
Pretty unique.
Yeah, because Twobromo LSD. Yeah, Twobromo LSD has always been controlled because you have to start with LSD. So these guys had a patent that basically synthesized Twobromo LSD without touching anything controlled or residuals or anything. It was a patent. So my team very quickly, in collaboration with some of the best synthetic chemists globally, went through a couple of glitches, but I would say from February that we started, by August, we had it. We had finally, for the first time that we know of, we had actually synthesized Twobromo LSD from A to Z without touching.
August 20 or 21?
21.
Great.
21.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quick.
It was quite an exciting time that we were able to get this substance. We've checked with Health Canada. Twobromo LSD is not a scheduled substance according to FDA and DEA. So, and I learned this term from Patrick, the fellow who sold us this asset, that we don't need any laws to be changed.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah. So from a big pharma perspective, that's really attractive because
you can get the traditional funding from the feds too, like the different governments, right?
Exactly.
It's extraordinary.
But from my interactions with big pharma over the years, if they think they have to wait for a federal law to be changed, or if they think there's a slight, this is illegal there or that's controlled there, they won't touch it. It just doesn't make it.
It's a riskier investment.
Yeah. So that really was attractive to me. Mm-hmm. And we finally got the Twobromo LSD. And then there were some anecdotal and clinical things that supported the use of Twobromo LSD previously, very limited, and cluster headache was one of them. And limited number of patients, but nevertheless, the study was very positive. It was published by a group of researchers from Harvard that collaborated with a clinic in Germany.
Is this Cluster Busters related at all, or is it a different group of scientists?
No, it's basically the different group.
That's neat that Harvard had different
things.
That's great.
So it became a very, it was like basically our reference point to start looking at Twobromo LSD and take it from a real FDA quality clinical path. Like, how do we put all that data together? So that's what we've been working on. And in parallel, during the synthesis process, we reached out to some of the experts in the field, Adam Halberstadt at University of California, San Diego, John McCorvey at University of Wisconsin, Eurofin Discovery group, a group out of Carleton University in Canada, and from various. And these are all these guys are they really believe that this is needed. If you really want to make a difference in terms of the number of patients you can treat and so on, and the non-hallucinogenic properties of Twobromo LSD. So,
oh wow, it lowers the hallucinogenic profile.
Zero.
The bromalization.
There is no.
That's really interesting.
So what we did, first thing, as soon as we got the material, we shipped it to these people. So the first group was Eurofin Discovery, and they started brain receptor binding studies. Does those Twobromo LSD bind to the same receptors as LSD? We looked at 80 different receptors. Okay, the 15 major ones that LSD attaches to that are thought to be part of the process that LSD works were all positive. So it does attach binding to these receptors, 5H2A, 5H2B, and so on. And binding to a receptor is one thing. It's like putting a key in a lock. But if it doesn't turn, it's useless. So a group out of Eurofin Discovery also did receptor binding and receptor activity. So does this activate the receptor or does it turn it off? Is it on or off? And in direct comparison with what we believe for LSD. So our results, we press released some of it last couple of weeks ago. It shows that it does. It actually is an agonist of 5H2A receptor, the main receptor of the brain. And more interestingly, it actually is. I'm boring you with science. I just don't want to go too much with this.
I am learning a lot. Keep going.
Yeah.
We're geeks, don't worry.
So 5H2B, which is known to be causing cardiovascular disease side effects of LSD, interestingly,
this is the heart valve thickening.
Yeah, heart valve,
like
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It was shown that Twobromo LSD is actually an antagonist, unlike LSD. So this is showing to be even a safer. And then for the interesting part, we went to Adam Halberstadt's lab, ran studies in a comparison with LSD head twitch, which is a proven model to show hallucination or not in animals. And we have a dose response that Twobromo LSD is not hallucinogenic versus, I think 0.1 milligram of LSD caused severe head twitching, while our Twobromo LSD up to 10 milligram didn't cause any type of hallucination.
Wow.
Yeah.
0.1 milligrams of LSD. Don't eat that much, people, I don't think.
Yeah.
But that's a lot. That's cool.
Yeah. So this is like, we went to 10 milligrams of Twobromo LSD. And
I don't know my decimal places that well. Is that 100 micrograms, roughly 0.1?
Well, to 0.1, yes, exactly.
Okay.
And it's 1,000 times more than what the amount of LSD was.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So we showed that this is actually a non-hallucinogenic compound. It binds to the same receptors as LSD. And now a group at Carleton is testing it in a depression model in animals. So we're very excited. I mean, this is something that as scientists, we try not to get too excited about it, but so this is where we're going with as much data we can generate, in addition to the synthesis data that we have to get it before the FDA, sometime first quarter of next year.
So this is kind of setting the stage for a phase 1 trial.
Yeah.
So this is all just kind of basic safety data that's required in the pharma move. And do you have plans on what the phase 1 might look like, or?
Phase 1 would be basically a dose escalation, a safety kind of thing. And this compound has been around for years and years and years. Lots of different, not, I would say, research quality papers, but there is information out there in terms of dosing, 10 microgram per kilogram and all the way up to 30, I think, microgram per kilogram. So our clinical group is putting that together right now.
Yeah, that's nice that we have kind of this other data that can help inform this stuff, make the science and progression easier.
Yeah, FDA is all about safety, right? So this is what we're looking first. So with our CMC package and these reference data, we want to go before the FDA in a couple of weeks, get some guidance from them, and then submit the package early next year.
I want to go back to the 5-HT2B heart valve thickening thing briefly. Have you seen the FDA or other regulatory groups be really cautious around that kind of activity that could lead to things like the fen-phen?
So this is what we think in terms of safety. This will look really good with the FDA, at least as a starting point. Again, nothing is better than clinical data, but as a starting point, as preclinical package to show the FDA that we're in fact antagonizing the receptor versus activating it that causes the heart valve problems.
So this is like a really early stage thing at this point, but it's early enough where we can kind of speculate a bit.
Right.
It sounds to me like what you're saying is people will be able to use this at home to help manage cluster headache symptoms or even prevent them from coming on ever, maybe.
Right. So our whole approach is really that home treatment, non-hallucinogenic, safe drug that you can take at home. This is for people who either can't afford to go to a clinic or are worried about hallucination. Some people are afraid of it. I don't know.
I understand why, but it's if you're really sick and you're suffering and you're, blue collar worker, like why would you want to take that on to solve a medical problem?
Right. I think that a large majority of people who have some kind of not severe mental issues, but that could benefit from this. That's a large population. I've heard it through this conference that there's a limited number of people you can take into clinics. If you're treating 50 million new patients in a sector, it's hard. And from the pharma side, also cost, and with insurance payers pay for this. That should be in the models that you put in. So our approach is low cost, patient friendly, non-hallucinogenic compound that is a very close cousin of LSD, but and has the same positive effects and can help with the treatment, but it doesn't have the side effects of hallucination. I was watching an interview with Michael Pollan a couple of weeks ago, and it was fascinating to me that he was talking about his experience that every time he wanted to try one of these compounds that he was trying, he was terrified. He said the night before, quote unquote, I was a wreck. So I think someone with that kind of knowledge who's afraid of hallucination or this type of reaction, it's the majority of the population would probably not want to be, if they don't have to be subject to that. I'm one of them. I've never taken one, and I think so. This is where we're targeting.
And a lot of people that are working in the psychedelic space will have some problems saying that we're taking the psychedelic experience, a hallucination, out of the medical kind of the pill that we're taking or the plant. But I guess what we're talking about, it's not a mental health disorder or an addiction disorder. So it's important to say, we're talking about a biomedical or a neurological condition. And right now, what do we have when we have headaches? Ibuprofen, Tylenol. What about cluster headaches? What's the best option right now for cluster headaches medically?
There is none.
It's not great.
No, there
Oxygen.
is none. Yeah, there's a variety of different things. Actually, since we started this and we had a couple of press releases out that this is what we want to do, the only communication calls I've had has been from people that are suffering from cluster headache. They're reaching to us, can we get involved? Can we be a part of from all parts of the world? It's like I've had calls. I'm in Canada from the US saying my wife is suffering from this. Can we? A guy from Holland, Netherlands reached out to us. So there's a very big interest in the cluster headache.
They're very, very debilitating conditions.
Exactly. So we think
also
that
known as suicide headaches. Like people actually will kill themselves because the symptoms are so bad.
It's very bad. Yes.
Yeah.
So we think that this is a good start, and we're. Again, maybe we're, in a way, because we're from the pure pharma side, we want to make sure that we sweat the details and leave nothing unturned when we get before the FDA. Because anybody can call the FDA saying we want to meet, but if you don't have the right package and if it's it's not complete, you won't get.
Make it easy for them, right?
Right,
yeah,
exactly. So we are getting as much science and data in place to, our team are very, they're experienced in this. So lots of years of experience in dealing with the FDA and what they're looking for. And so we're very excited about this. I think this is a new frontier. This conference, when you sit there and you look, and then everyone is doing a contribution to a new space opening. And I compare it to, early days of when we figured out beta receptors and how can they help in treating heart disease or heart ailments.
Like in a lot of ways, there's probably a lot of analogies with the early drug industry coming out of like chemical manufacture and whatnot. It's really interesting landscape. Thankfully, we have way better science.
Right.
And
so this is exactly where this is going, because now after all these years, how many drugs do we have that help with the drug, with your heart? If it's beating too fast or too slow, or blood pressure. Yeah, exactly. Diuretics and this and that. So I think this is the start of research and development for mental health and these types of ailments. And now with the advent of AI, I think AI is going to play a big role in our power. Totally. Computational power is so great, and understanding molecular structures and how they interact with receptors. So this is what, 1,500 people in this conference. It could easily be 15,000 in a few years.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about cluster headaches generally.
Yeah.
How do we want to speak about cluster headaches? Like the common idea of migraines is some sort of electrical storm, just kind of uncontrolled activity. Is it somewhat similar, or is it different than cluster?
The etiology of cluster headache is not really well understood.
Okay.
It's just not. Even when you read the papers that are published in this area, it's just one of those things that is so, as you said, debilitating, but what causes it is really not well understood. We've heard vasoconstriction, blood things in the brain that get constricted. To it's not a psychiatric thing. It's different than depression, right? This is a neurophysiology. You're really looking at affecting something in the brain that is. In fact, the paper that was published in cluster headache using Twobromo LSD, they were speculating, because they didn't have receptor data, that it was related to the blood flow, mediated.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do we have an idea of how many people are suffering, maybe in North America or
overall,
worldwide?
cluster headache as a category is around 300 to 400,000. But the subtypes of, I think a group out of UK, Beckley, is working on SUNA. I forget the abbreviation, but it's a subtype of it that falls below the threshold for being an orphan drug designation.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's like a lot of these somewhat orphaned or just above that threshold conditions. And
right.
We're gonna hopefully be able to, hopefully once you're done here, and get this all the way through phase 3 to delivery.
Right.
Hopefully, there's new data and new ways to attack these other really niche diseases and situations for folks.
I think we're getting there. We're going to get, as we start getting more data out of this. We are somewhat unique in just focusing on this LSD analog. I think there's a couple of other companies that are doing that. And again, for us, non-controlled. So that should expedite the development because we don't need the special clinics that have license to store, for example, or schedule drugs and things like that. Patient recruitment should be easier, which is usually the limiting factor in running a clinical trial.
Saying something safer than LSD alone is saying a lot. That's like, out of everything used, one of the safest.
Right.
Like exponentially safer than alcohol, for instance.
And exactly.
Like, this drug is even safer than LSD, which is a crazy thing
and
to
it's
say.
not addictive. You know, these are not addictive substances, unlike opioids.
So we're not expecting any kind of withdrawal symptom if somebody quit?
No. Psychedelics are not addictive. I mean, this is a conception people have.
Right. This is one of our reasons for loving it so much is that, like we're not really seeing, like ketamine's, like we call it the addictive psychedelic.
Right.
But realistically, if you dose appropriately, you're not going to have that problem. And this is even like substantially safer than those things.
Yeah. And then the whole thing about the hallucination. And I've had people investing in us. This is true. A couple of investors say, I didn't have a good experience. First time, I tried, it was good. But the second time I went in one of these treatment clinics, the hallucinogenic thing was just awful. I don't want to do that again. So, in this, I think that along with non-controlled substance, so we don't need any laws to be changed.
Amazing.
Should give us a faster pace to development. Again, if science doesn't back you, it doesn't matter what I say or what people. As long as science is backing you up and the data is good.
A couple of quick questions from me, Ahmed. I understand there's a couple of years down the line till we have the data, till we really know what does it feel like to take this new medication that you're creating. We were talking about the causes of cluster headaches also not being too clear. Do you feel like when we look back at what you're creating at Better Life, are there going to be any other complementary therapies that could help to take this tablet? So right now, if you take an ibuprofen, you kind of just pop it and away you go. You just carry on with what you were doing.
Right.
But sometimes if you have a really bad headache, you'll lie down. You'll put some quiet music on or no music. You'll close the curtains. You'll have a massage to your head.
Right.
Are there any dietary changes or sleep changes that you think could help along with your medication that you're working on that helps potentially people dealing with cluster headaches?
I think so. I think this will be a holistic approach. It's not just one thing, silver bullet that gets you get rid of that condition. Yeah, I think it will be. It's just, again, this is going to take a lot of expertise. We have them in our advisory board but they're all waiting for the data to come out. And then we have to see it through clinical trials and then tweak that design to say, okay, with this and these conditions and the advent of whatever addition to this is going to be more efficacious. So we're also, I think, part of a thing with Twobromo LSD. A lot of anecdotal. Again, this was anecdotal from clinics that have used other compounds like ibogaine and so on. They said, well, we actually think that Twobromo LSD dampens the side effects or hallucinogenic effects of the other ones. And we have administered this to patients that helped with their. So would this be a combination with more severe cases that need that? I think there's a lot to be discovered.
And I was looking on your website. There's another molecule you're working on, TD010-DHHB,
Right.
that's got a different indication, anxiety and benzodependency. So that's completely different.
It's completely different, and it's not a real psychedelic. That one, dihydrohonocule, is from magnolia bark, and this was part of the assets that we acquired.
It's made from the magnolia tree.
Yeah,
what a beautiful tree. That's fantastic.
It is. Yeah. So the closest thing I can say comparison is probably the cannabis space. For years, people knew, you smoke it, you would take the oil, you various things, but it was really GW Pharma that took a very hardcore FDA approach. Said we're going to take
first to market with a THC,
CBD, and they didn't really change the molecule. It wasn't a huge change to it that they took it through the process. It took 3 years or longer. So this is what we think with DHHB is something that's been around. It's been used in Chinese medicine, but no one has really pharmaceuticalized it. And no one has generated data. It's non-hallucinogenic, but it's showing efficacy in anxiety. And now with, benzodiazepines, they're legal, but they create a high.
This could be an alternative to benzodiazepines.
Exactly. That's what we're looking at. Yeah.
Okay. So when I heard you, I was like, wait, what? Helping with benzo addiction? Like, in a way, yes.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like accelerating detox or something.
Yeah. It's not for detox from benzos. It's an alternative to benzos.
Yes.
So
it's really helpful.
You don't get hooked on it.
Many alternatives to benzodiazepines.
Yeah. Those are probably one of the most highly dependent, they create a lot of dependency and abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just looking this up. So this actually comes from the honocule tree. And so this has been around for hundreds of years in China?
Yeah, it's been used in Chinese medicine and all that. So we are now in the process of, again, same thing we did with Twobromo LSD, synthesize it properly, the purity and so on, and make sure we put the right data package together to go before the FDA. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Exciting stuff. So BetterLife is really still in the preclinical early stages, but where you could be in a few years, this is kind of groundbreaking stuff no one else is really working on or paying attention to.
Yeah, I think that's what got, can we put this together in a way that, again, it's patient-friendly, cost-effective, all the things that are more or less a big pharma approach to something that could really make a difference. It's not specialized. You don't need to have a high net worth to get this treatment. And, you don't need to worry about side effects.
Sounds great to me.
Checking all the right boxes. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So we got a lot of work to do. And we're very excited. And I want to thank everyone here in this conference to get this going. This is a good start.
Absolutely. Exactly that. We're kind of not even in the first inning yet and a long way to go. So thank you very much for your work. And I'm really excited to learn more about your company.
Thank you.
Anything you want to close with?
I'm looking forward to the next couple of quarters. I think it will be very exciting for us as we get this thing, a couple of these projects before the FDA.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again for your time, and hopefully we can do it again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad Doroudian, BetterLife Pharmacy. This is Joe Moore and David Drapkin in sunny Miami, signing out from Wonderland. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today with your host, David Drapkin, in wonderful Miami at Wonderland Conference. I'm sitting alongside Abid Nazeer, Chief Medical Officer at Wesana Health. Pleasure to meet you, Abid. How's it going?
Pleasure to meet you too. Thank you so much for having me on. Awesome opportunity. Love your podcast. Huge fan.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been around a while. I don't know, how long have you been kind of listening to Joe and Carl doing their thing?
I started listening to you guys about a year ago, more regularly, but but once I started listening, I went back in the archives.
So basically you're hooked, huh?
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, I've been a big fan of Psytech when you were in that kind of incarnation, and I've had lovely conversations with Deb and Talia and Chaim. Having spent time in Israel, I love what they're doing, and I love the education and the training that I've been on. And the ketamine masterclass, it was a masterclass last month. It was a 2-day fantastic training, and you did a couple of wonderful presentations there. So there's one thing I wanted to just say is education. Like, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to psychedelics. How do you see your role as an educator, as a teacher, and as someone that can really, train and the next generation of medical clinicians, as well as patients and just the general population?
Well, I'm glad you liked that masterclass. I was wondering, how much info do I try to cram into, my hour and a half? And I went with the decision to just cram as much as I could to try to make it, valuable. But those master classes, we love putting those on. The first one we did, we just got kind of experts from around the world. And then the second one we did, we went straight boots on the ground, people operating, doing it day to day. And I think it was a lot more like nuts and bolts of, applying ketamine in a clinic setting. Education is huge. Psytech that's their MO, is events, summits, education, webinar, and that'll be continuing. We have a lot more plans in that arena. And that's, I think, one side of my job, my new role as CMO for Wesana that I just love, that part of it, just getting straight down to education, because ultimately we're so early. There's so much we have to learn as a whole community in this space. So anything we can do to further that and like become known as synonymous with, medical experts in this space, that's what, I'm all for it. So.
Wonderful. And before we go into the nuts and bolts of the clinical and the science and the particularly looking at your clinics and the Wesana changes since you've had that merger, taking a step back, who are you? I'd love to get to know you a little bit. Where are you from? Like, what's your life been like that kind of leads you here in the year 2021 to being at Wonderland Conference? If you want to just paint a little picture for everybody listening. I'm
from Chicago, born and raised. That's my hometown. I, live there now. My clinics are there. I went to LSU, Louisiana State University, chief resident there, and I was over the post-traumatic stress disorders clinic at the VA in Shreveport, Louisiana. And then I went into the private practice world, large groups, small groups, hospital work, like every setting, very traditional general psychiatry. And then I got a specialty in addiction medicine. That was one of my focuses. And I took on the role of a chief medical officer for Symmetria Recovery, which is like it's about 12 locations in a comprehensive opioid treatment program. And that started, I think, getting me a little bit more into the administrative side of things and looking at things from more of a population level rather than just an individual level. I enjoyed that work. I think it opened up a lot of doors. Mm-hmm. By this time, 5 years ago, I'm pretty burnt out. I think just, doing general psychiatry, the efficacy is not great for many of the treatments we're using. So it becomes somewhat frustrating, I think, when you're trying to help people and you're struggling. You don't have any more tools in your toolbox. That's why I made the leap of faith to start a ketamine clinic based in a psychiatric model. There were no ketamine clinics in Chicago at this point. About 5 years
you're number
ago.
one. Wow.
Yeah.
Good
and
man.
It just, first patient actually, I knew ketamine could work, but I've never seen it like actually help somebody. Actually, I've never had the chance to administer it. First patient 5 years ago, it was just night and day improvement. It was just like, wow, I was floored. My whole staff was. We're like, this is our focus. This is what we're going to get into. And naturally, then you start really exploring altered states of consciousness and all the new psychedelic modalities that'll be coming down the pipeline. So that's kind of our focus there. The ketamine clinic really did well. Psychiatry / ketamine. We do like all kind of services there. It's not just ketamine. We overlaid a ketamine on a comprehensive approach. That's when I, kind of realized that I think I want to pair up with a really good partner and started really looking into the acquisition process and who I can be acquired by. And it was a very clear choice to me when I started speaking with the folks at Psytech. I am, and they're excellent. They aligned perfectly well. And then Wesana came into the picture, and they aligned really well too. We just fit really well. So it was just a awesome experience to actually land in this spot now. And now I'm in a good spot now. I really am after this. I have twins, boy, girl, 5-year-olds at home. My wife's a physician. She's an urgent care physician. Just my whole family's based out of Chicago. Love making music, and I love my Chicago Bears. Typical life.
Is that the baseball team?
Oh, come on now.
Literally, I don't know.
All right. It's NFL.
Oh, sorry.
The Bears.
Sorry.
Chicago. Who
Okay,
lost?
that's the end of the interview. So it sounds like you've really worked hard, to be honest, to get to where you are and to become who you are. And that leap of faith you took 5 years ago to be the first ketamine clinic in Chicago, you must have felt like your patients deserved something that if you waited for the general medical practice to evolve, you might be retired. And so you kind of took that step. What would you say to other people that perhaps haven't yet taken that step, or they're doing these training courses with psychedelics today, with PsyTech, they're listening to podcasts and they're not sure, can I do this? Is it going to be helpful? How do I go about it? What would you say to people that kind of haven't taken that leap yet?
I'm such a cheerleader for people in this when they're contemplating it. Like when I made the decision to open up a ketamine clinic, there are none, right? It's actually a kind of a risky proposition at that point, and there was nobody else doing it, and you attract some attention by bringing something new to a place. I told my wife that I want to open up private practice ketamine psychiatry clinic like a couple days after we found out she was pregnant with twins.
Wow.
She's like, now? Is this the right time? There's never a right time, but if you feel it, you should go for it. And especially, there's so much room here for more people to come in, bring different skill sets. They should take the leap of faith. And I'm biased. I just, my gut feeling tells me where everything's headed. Like in 10 years, the way we practice mental health care will be different. And I believe it, right? So to me, it's not as risky of a proposition. That's why I tell people, like, just do it and call me if you need any help. I just want to help however I can. Any nuances that I've learned over the years, I want to help people, get into this. They should do it, especially if they have an entrepreneurial spirit in them. They should take that. It's quite fulfilling, I think, a lot of work, but very fulfilling to build something up. And now I see where it started and now where it's come. It's just a good feeling. It's
an interesting time that when we're seeing the intersection of kind of clinical treatment with big business coming in and celebrity. So I've heard a little bit about your CEO, Daniel Costello at Wesana Health. Again, so apologies about the Cubs, and I didn't know the NFL. So he used to work, Daniel Costello, for an ice hockey team, the Bears. Sorry, I literally don't watch. I watch football, soccer. So Daniel Costello is an ice hockey player.
Yes.
I got that one right. What is his experience and story with TBI, with suffering with mental health and maybe addiction as well? I'm not sure. And perhaps how has that mirrored some of other patients' journeys around not finding the right treatment, not getting the right diagnosis, or not being able to ask for help, or knowing in a sense what's available and how to just relieve that suffering? So how does that kind of tie in with what Wesana is doing and with perhaps just the general patient experience when it comes to trauma?
Yeah, no, that's a really good observation. I mean, his story is very compelling to me, and that's I think a part of my decision-making process to really want to work within the Wesana structure is because when it's being led by somebody with a personal journey, and it's personal to him, and I think most people who know Daniel, have heard him talk, know that it is personal. Yes, he went through, multiple concussions. Ice hockey can be a violent sport. He suffered traumatic brain injury, PTSD from past abuse, addiction, suicidality, and really psychedelic medicine saved his life. He had a difficult journey in healthcare. He talks a lot about fragmented care and one hand doesn't talk to the other. This doc's not talking to that doctor. Basically, the concept of having to navigate multiple systems, yet not getting an answer, that's frustrating. So, I know my time looking at general healthcare systems, the addiction model, people have suffered with the same kind of dilemma. They're they don't know the full breadth of what's out there for them. Then they have to navigate multiple places to get their care. So the concept of getting comprehensive care is important. Daniel is very inspiring, right? So his story is inspiring. And I think that's a great motivation coming top down in Wesana that I just love. And it fits well with, like, when the acquisition with SciTech, and that included my practices as well, right? My 2 right now active mental health clinics providing care at this moment. And I think that was a perfect addition to what they were doing with trauma and TBI, because drug development side, studying psilocybin compounds for TBI, we'll be looking at MDMA for TBI, and brain health as a whole, just to focus on earlier detection of traumatic brain injury, being able to track things better through the process and make it more of an integrative approach, right? 360 services wrap, not just one modality. We will, with time, as the research progresses in the TBI space that we're doing, I mean, he's compiling experts in TBI from around the world to look at this. When we try to integrate that into the clinic model now, that'll be fun, because we're going to start adding services that are validated into an existing system that's very widely used and adopted for care. And then try to blend it into this nice model where now you have remote patient monitoring, you have comprehensive care, you have multiple places you can go within our system for different kinds of treatment. And you just know that everything that's being offered is evidence-based. So I think it's a perfect fit to go with the drug development side of things, because we're bringing the clinical infrastructure and the remote patient monitoring product. So put it all together, it fits nicely. That's why I just felt like a really good kind of fit into this. I think the future of TBI is going to be a lot better once some of these treatments progress through the FDA phases. And there's such a focus now on, and it's not just athletes. Like, see, this is one thing I also want to distinguish. So, Mike Tyson's one of our, he's an advisor to Wesana. And there's a professional athlete approach as well, that this is great for TBI, and something obviously Daniel, being a professional athlete, knows really well. But let's also not forget the vets, combat vets, the survivors, of assault, abuse, car accidents. There's so many ways you can get trauma and TBI that we want to keep it abroad. It's actually a broader indication. I always want to get people to remember it's not just contact sports only. There's many ways that this can help people.
It's time to get into the psychedelics. You
Yes.
ready? Let's talk about the science in the brain, and talking about TBI. Right now you're using ketamine. Much of the research you do will, maybe be psilocybin and MDMA. I assume you'll be working with that eventually. Can we just dig into some of the geeky stuff around the brain and the extent to which TBI impacts the brain, and how can psilocybin and or ketamine work with the brain, both kind of as a prophylaxis pre-trauma and kind of post-trauma to heal those effects?
The beauty of psychedelics is the synaptogenesis. I mean, the reconnection of parts of the brain, neuroplasticity, another way of saying it, right? Like the release of brain-derived neurotropic factor. This concept, I think, is critical to probably how it's going to be helping TBI. Getting, at the panel yesterday, Daniel talked about the 2 hemispheres communicating with each other again. That's being seen when we give psychedelics. And I think that was one of his aha moments to really go forward with looking into TBI and how psychedelics can help it. So the concept of just rebuilding brain connections is going to be key. Now, TBI is a multi-system condition. It has physical effects. It has psychiatric effects, and it presents a lot of times as a psychiatric condition in a way, but many times it's accompanied by a lot of physical conditions as well. So it's a multi-system approach that we want to look at. But there's a lot of overlap right now to just like even ketamine right now. Ketamine, not, if you want to be picky about it, it's not a psychedelic. Does it activate the 5-HT2A receptor? Okay, maybe not as much. Maybe we're not going to call it an exact psychedelic, but we know it's a dissociative. Okay, great. But we know it gives altered state of consciousness, number one. And number two, we know that it can actually cause neuroplasticity and make your brain into putty so you can remold this in a way. And that's a similar concept like psychedelics, right? So that's why it's such I guess a path to psychedelics is learning through ketamine, utilizing ketamine now. It's available to us now. And that's going to help inform us, I think, with psychedelics. But psychedelic, it's such a broad acting like compounds that the indications that it can help are broad. I mean, it could be studied for many things: migraine, autism, depression, trauma. There's so many ways, and that's because it's not a narrowly focused approach, such as like traditional pharmacology. This is a serotonin dopamine reuptake inhibitor, right? It's got very specific thing.
More predictable, huh?
Yeah, and then is that all there is? We're complex beings, and the brain is super complex. So that whole hypothesis of just it's all about upregulation of serotonin or dopamine or norepinephrine receptor. I don't think it's going to hold weight in the long run. There's too many other factors involved, and psychedelics are teaching us that you can approach this in a whole different way, and probably coming at it because of the therapy part finally being reintegrated. It's always like a lot of psychiatrists who go through training talk to each other, and they're like, ask each other when we're asking where do you go to residency, we'll sometimes ask, was it like a biological based residency or a psychotherapy based? It's almost like some programs focus on therapy, some focus on biology. And the needle should be right in the middle for the best effect. And I think psychedelics is the first thing to actually bring it back to that combo.
I love that you're saying that. So, I've worked in addiction and mental health, and those are two separate things. So just like we've got a right and a left hemisphere of the brain that's separate.
Yes.
We've got addiction and psychiatry separate, and we've got medications and the biological and the psychotherapy, the more kind of process oriented, is separate. And what I think psychedelics can do is bring them all together under one umbrella, one treatment protocol. So I think there's an opportunity around what's called integrative wellness, holistic wellness. So you've got the psychotherapy, you've got the psychedelic experiences. You've also got things like digital therapeutics, wearables, and there's also things I'm really interested in, like massage and meditation and nature and kind of social relationships and group therapy. All of those things could be part of this model that really gives a person, that ability to integrate their psychedelic experiences into their real life, to transform who they are, and to make it kind of more ongoing, and therefore probably need less treatment and less boosters to be more resilient to life. So, where would you say your thoughts are around that, and what perhaps could Wesana do around some of those subjects?
Yeah, that's very well put, David. I agree with that. In fact, so much so that in our practice, we actually are looking at how frequently somebody's coming back for, let's say they're in a ketamine protocol right now. If their maintenance interval is shortening and they're coming back more frequently, that's immediate red flag to us. Something we need to dig deeper and increase our intervention so we can have them come in less. We want them to need it less. Not need it more. We want them to need it less. And it doesn't matter how much you just keep dosing somebody with, whether it's a psychedelic or ketamine, it doesn't matter. You won't achieve the best possible outcome unless you break that glass ceiling. And the only way you break it is by looking at everything you just said, that full comprehensive approach. So groups, yes, Wesana has plans to actually offer we want to actually offer a significant program for caregivers, not just the patient, because just looking at it 360, right? And the support system for somebody is so crucial that people get caregiver fatigue and burnout.
Yeah.
So we want to support them in the community. So we're going to have the group therapy concept, anything that can help, that's not harmful and has some science to support its efficacy, that it works. Those are the three things I'd look for in services, right? So there are many things like auricular acupuncture can be really effective in addiction diagnoses. And even if it's something like you said, massage, right? Therapy. So we're in our clinic model. Here's the thing. Not every clinic can actually have, well, I guess it can, but it's harder logistically to make every single clinic have every single service. It's hard to do that, especially when you want to get a footprint in areas that you want to improve access and reach people that might be out of the city center. Let's say it's harder to build the big center of excellence where you have everything in there, but we will be doing that in each region, right? We want a hub and spoke, and in the center of excellence, we're taking it further. We're going to have even stuff like hyperbaric oxygen, sensory deprivation. We're looking at physical therapy approaches, some functional neurology approach, and then, wellness as well, yoga, meditation, but then combining traditional therapies in there as well. TMS, the research will be there. And that's going to be one line of our clinic model. But the rest of the other lines are, we can't have it all in there, but we will have, depending on where it is and the situation, many of the services will be in many of the different locations. But within our network, we'll be able to have a referral process that's actually, we want to base it on evidence and data of what would work best for an individual. That's something we're going to be focusing on looking at. And then keep them in one system and without any hassles in navigating through this, but offer all of it, that's for sure.
Abid, what you just said is a big deal. So I don't take that lightly. That kind of hub and spoke model, that's pretty ambitious to have that kind of integrated center of excellence that can have those kind of different integrative tools to really give a person what they need, perhaps when they're at the more acute stage doing kind of assessment work as well. How do you see this working with America being massive and how many clinics are needed? How many centers of excellence? How many clinics? Like, what are we talking about here? And how do we kind of make this accessible to all of, let's just start with America. How about that? And feel free to talk about digital therapeutics and Wesana solutions if that's part of the solution.
Yes, definitely. So we have to first get good at it and prove it out. And I don't know, I guess call it the lab. We need to experiment the model. Chicago is the home base for this, being that my clinics are there that are now Wesana clinics. And now, it's kind of like a headquarter in a way for Wesana, which, Daniel, he lives in Chicago for a little while longer. Chad Ramsey, our executive board chair. I'm there, my team's there. So great place to start with the center. And then this is systems-based healthcare, right? Like something we have to learn from big healthcare is systems-based approach to delivering care, because you have to have a system communicating with each other. There has to be processes. We have been working tirelessly for 6 months on hundreds and hundreds of training videos and SOPs about the processes for everything. And that's
standard operating procedures. Yeah. So no one knows about that stuff, that no one's going to give you a prize for that. But if you don't do it, you can get in big trouble. So you're really doing due diligence behind the scenes.
That's actually the value is in those SOPs, like having the processes. Can't build something like that without it. So that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months. We're almost done with that first phase of that. Now, then we're looking at building a clinic, more clinics. We have third one being built in Chicago area, and then we're going to look for the center of excellence in the Chicago area as well. At the same time, we do want to expand our footprint. How aggressively and how quickly are we going to expand? We want to be aggressive, but we have to be very careful not to grow too fast. Just going to lose quality of care. Like, I don't want quality to go down as we're integrating multiple. So it's almost like an buy and build approach, right? So in a new region is our strategy. And this is the first part, the absolute best partner in that region. So this person should be a rock star for that area. Like they need to be somebody we want to build around, and somebody who can help contribute to the Wesana, system and their expertise. Maybe they bring a new skill set, right? I mean, we don't have every single expertise under our belt right now, right? Like we know there's people out there that can be of such huge value to this, to bring into our network, and then build clinics, satellite clinics around that strategic acquisition, that physician that we bring into the network. That'll be the model of buy and build. We're looking at multiple states, Florida, Portland, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, Colorado, New Mexico. And we're in talks with a variety of types of practitioners. But, let's say I'm hoping 10, 12 clinics in a year. That's the goal. it'll get better and better each successive year. We can probably, once we get a really good buy build system M&A team that's just knocking it out, we'll expand. We'll go rapidly as we get better at it. But I want to have fine control on quality in our lab here first. Make sure we get it right as we start, and bring in the right people as we start expanding.
Sounds solid foundation laying. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, we got a couple more minutes.
Sure.
So let's see. I wanted to touch on migraines because I know that's a big part of experiencing TB often. How are you helping people with migraines, the research you're going to be doing? And also talk about neuroimaging. How, are you going to be doing that, or will you have partners that do that neuroimaging piece? How important is that?
So we want to take diagnostic test or modality one by one and really kind of vet it and work it in. So things that we're looking at would be like QEEG, working that in. We want to do everything pre and post ketamine. Like everything we do, we should look before and after, right? Why not? Let's gather that data. Assessing vestibular system, looking at eye movements, nystagmus. There are biomarkers, indicators all over in TBI that indicate different, and we're going to look at each one separately. It's a process to go through all of that one by one. We want to build it on a data collection approach. So that's where the Wesana Solutions comes in, our product where it's remote patient monitoring. The way we start with it now is like just integrate with your EMR, give a dashboard to the clinician, let them view the treatment in a visualized way of all the biometric data coming in from the patient who's wearing a Fitbit or a Garmin or wearable, heart rate variability, stress events, sleep issues. We still push all the rating scales to somebody, and all that data we're analyzing. In that model is we want to slowly start integrating neurological diagnostic tests at some point. Migraine is not something we focus on too much clinically right now. I mean, yeah, we've used ketamine for some migraine patients when needed, but we just can't work with psilocybin yet. Like our clinic site right now is not a Schedule 1 research site, right? We'll have that in our infrastructure very soon, but it's not there yet. So that's where the benefit's going to come, I think, more than ketamine for migraines. It's actually going to be the psychedelic psilocybin.
Interesting.
So I know our first and foremost will be TBI and then PTSD. Sometimes I should talk to Daniel. Where does migraines fit on that list? There's so many places you can look for studies. Like I told you in the beginning, I want to look at addiction and dual diagnosis, and we can only do so much, right? It's like we got to process it one by one.
Yeah, so that I hear that patient part of you wanting to lay the foundations, and that ambitious part of you that just wants to heal. And maybe for my last question or last point, I know that Wesana Health committed $1.5 million to MAPS. And that's a fantastic thing to do in our kind of nascent space. And, they're a public benefit corporation, so that $1.5 million is a significant pledge. So I thought it'd be lovely just to hear about what was the intention and what do you hope MAPS can do in this space, and why was that important to Wesana to make that effort?
That's a starting point. Even that's not the end of, I think, our relationship with MAPS. We'll just continue. Daniel has a great relationship directly with MAPS. Rick and our team knows their team. In my opinion, it's the best. Like like you said yesterday, there's a reason why we're all even here today.
The Holy Grail.
Yeah. But the goal with MAPS is going to be to study MDMA and really be the gatekeeper for that for TBI. Like that's the number one indication we want to study first with MDMA. And MAPS did so great getting MDMA this far. Let's start adding indications. So that's where we're going to lean on with MAPS, is work with them to look at TBI.
Wonderful. Thank you. So this is David Drapkin from Psychedelics Today signing out with Abid Nazeer, Chief Medical Officer at Wesana Health. It's been a real pleasure. Any final thoughts for our viewers and listeners?
No, I just, it's an exciting time. And honestly, I'm just excited for the future. Thank you so much for bringing me on this. I love this podcast. It was awesome talking. Let's do it again. Don't forget about me. It's
been a real pleasure. And I'd love to come see your clinic in Chicago.
Yes, anytime.
Yeah, I'm sure you're looking forward to getting home and seeing your twins.
Yeah. Enough back of Miami. Work. Time to go back to Chicago.
Take care, Abid. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We have a fun relationship with the PR team now, where we're getting PR services in exchange for highlighting some folks. These were two of those folks, but realistically, I'm actually very excited we got them on regardless. SciTech and Wesana, obviously very interesting I've got my opinions on Mike Tyson there, but I'll keep those inside for now. And, Better Life, it's this debate on, do we need the psychedelic experience for these compounds to actually heal us? I believe this particular argument around, forgetting, because this is a week ago, but Twobromo LSD for cluster headaches, having what we think is a really substantial effect on these people who might just go ahead and kill themselves. Like that's extraordinary in and of itself. Why do we need to push the psychedelic experience on people? Is it necessary? And is it even ethical to kind of force somebody into that if there's an alternative without it? If they want the experience, great. I just don't think we need to force it on people because of our bias on like how extraordinary the experience is. Yeah. I don't know. Forced dosing just seems a little ridiculous to me. Forced psychedelic experience. Obviously quite unethical. So bleeds into medicine. Like, what's the lowest level of impact we need to make on these people to heal what they came to you for so they can get back to their lives? Yeah. Big thoughts from Joe Moore. All right, everybody. I think that's it for now. Again, January 6th, Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists kicks off. Learn more at psychedelicstoday.com. Extraordinary course, amazing reviews from students, and can't wait to kick this next round off. Other amazing things coming soon in our educational bailiwick. I don't know what the term is. Another class coming that's going to be extraordinary. So stay tuned. We've not mentioned much about it publicly yet. So it's going to be a big deal, though, in my opinion. And again, Horizons NYC. I think it's December 1 through 5 in New York City, Manhattan, Cooper Union Building. Extraordinary conference. If you go, you're probably going to love it. When I go, I usually consume about 3 to 5 talks versus what I did in Wonderland, which was I maybe had time for one talk. Ben Sessa and David Nutt. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of those two. All right. Yeah, I think that's it for now. So horizons.nyc for more on that. Check out some of our classes. Maybe just leave us a review on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, whatever you use for your podcasting. Just see if you can leave us a review or some stars. And Facebook loves stars. Same with Google. Or tell a friend. We just love to share this stuff with everybody we can. All right. I think that's it for now. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next episode. Joe Moore signing off.